Hello and welcome to the Wealthy Wellbeing Podcast, where we talk about all things health, fitness, real estate, and entrepreneurship. My name is Zach Bush. I am your host, and today I have a very special guest, Jada Thoele. Jada, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
So why don't you give everybody a little background about yourself, who you are, your journey through real estate, business, health and fitness, and anything else you think would be good for them to know.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. So I'm a 24-year-old kind of entrepreneur. I am a real estate investor right now, but I kind of jumped into the real estate investment field when I was 21 back in, I think about September 2021. And I have been doing real estate full time ever since. Actually, maybe not ever since, maybe since like 2022. But anyways, so I'm a real estate investor. I've been doing this for about 3 years. And in terms of my health and fitness journey, I'm definitely still working on that. I have gone through a lot of spurts of trying to decide what sort of day or time of day is best for me to kind of just move my body. Sometimes if I'm feeling like it, it's early in the morning and I do Pilates. Other times it's after work, maybe around 5 or 6, and I just go outside and juggle the ball or go with my dad who actually knows how to work out. And he's been in a ton of sports and had done weightlifting in the past. So I alternate between what I do. But more and more, I'm starting to get a little more consistent with that and making sure that I'm able to move and exercise at least once a day.
Awesome. So 24, super young. I know what a lot of things that you're doing in real estate and in business. Why don't you explain a little bit more about kind of specifically what you're working on, what your businesses look like?
Yeah. So right now, the biggest thing that I'm working on is I'm a private money lender in the real estate field. So anybody that is doing a flip or people that are needing what's called earnest money deposit when they're trying to buy a house or they're trying to wholesale a house, or if people are trying to double close, whatever needs money in real estate, that's what me and my partners provide. So that's the biggest thing that I have. I also help manage a wholesale operation. And then I do some small things here and there. At 22, I was really big into the Airbnb arbitrage or the rental arbitrage. So I have about 3 now that I still manage. It went from 3 to 15, back to 3. But yeah, those are the main 3 things that I'm doing.
Awesome. So let's dive into each one of those. Not everybody in here is familiar with real estate or as familiar with real estate as you and I are. So let's talk about the arbitrage, what you just talked about. So what is Airbnb arbitrage and how'd you get into it?
Yeah. So essentially, Airbnb arbitrage is when you rent a property. So you're the tenant and then you sublet the property. So then you kind of become like the sub landlord. So that's pretty much what I did in 2022. I'm a part of the sub 2 community. If you don't know what that is, it's essentially just a huge real estate community. It's amazing. Everybody in there is it's so diverse. And there's a lot of really great people like Zach. But they had in the community back in 2022, people were doing an Airbnb arbitrage challenge. And there were a couple guys that were kind of showing a whole group of us how they did Airbnb arbitrage, and that was their main model and how they were making money. And being a 22-year-old, owning seemed like it was a little too intense and what's the right word? Just intimidating. So I thought, okay, well, I'm totally fine with renting because it's just a lease and I can get out of a lease easy. So yeah, that's pretty much what I did. I called up a landlord, or I called up an owner on Zillow that had her property for rent. I said, hey, can I tour the property? I'm interested in making this a corporate rental where I would house traveling professionals, like traveling nurses. And so we ended up meeting. She liked me. She said, sure, let's do that. So that in a nutshell is Airbnb arbitrage. Why the Airbnb is in the name is essentially you can utilize that platform to find guests. Essentially, you don't have to use Airbnb. And a lot of people will ask, well, are you doing this to make it an Airbnb? And the answer that I tell them is, well, Airbnb is one of the platforms that we utilize to find our guests. So that's where that name all comes in.
Mm-hmm. So as an owner, what would be the advantages for them? Like, why would they do that, knowing that you're not actually going to be living in the property? You're going to have people potentially turning over, right? As
Mhm.
somebody who owns the property, it's like, I don't know if I want somebody else doing that. Why would they agree to have you do that and sublet it out?
Well, one of the main things that I like to remind the owners when I'm talking to them is because we have guests and because this is a business, that means that we're going to keep up with the property better than pretty much anybody else could or anybody else would. Maybe not could, but anybody else would. So if you're living, I mean, think about the last time that you cleaned your whole house and you did a whole turnover. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't do that as often as I would if I wasn't running a business. So that's like the main thing. With some people here and there, I know that they also provide some sort of well, maybe not compensation, but um, I guess they'll take care of repairs up to a certain dollar amount. So that's also another thing that you can add. But those two are the main things that I like to tell owners of. And then I always tell them, of course, we always have insurance. So should anything happen to the property, we have insurance that would cover the entire property. So I hope that they don't worry about that. And then lastly, they don't really have to be a landlord. They don't really have to manage the property. I mean, they'll check in here and there, but um, like I said, mostly because of the turnover rate and because of the taking care of repairs up to a certain dollar amount. That kind of takes care of everything that a landlord would need
Mhm.
to be aware of.
It makes it super easy for them. They don't have to worry about it. And the property, like you said, because the turnover is so often, you're getting cleaners in there every time. Like, think about when you went to an Airbnb, like, it's advantageous for them to do it because, hey, like, my house is getting cleaned once a week or once a month, like deep clean, rather than, maybe every 6 months with a long-term tenant, I go in there and just, do a filter change and take a quick look at what's going on. So their property, they know, is getting taken care of. And like you said, it makes it easier for them. They can just sit back knowing that you're really running the show.
Hmm.
Awesome. I love that. So the arbitrage is great. So you went from 3 to 15 back to three. So what the scaling, was it all just you? Were you managing for other people? Is that what part of that 15 was? And why the scaling up and then why the scaling back down?
So the first three was me. Well, it wasn't just me. I bring on private money partners, and I really love collaboration. I don't like doing things alone, so I was bringing any people that I liked to work with me, but I was the one that was managing the properties. And then I ended up getting 12 all at once because I joined another property manager's kind of portfolio. She needed help managing, and I was really into scaling at the time, and so I kind of took on her properties and was managing those. Realized I didn't want to. I don't think I need to be in the service business right now, or at least the hospitality business. I think everything's kind of service. But when it comes to short term rentals, for me, for a lot of the properties, we could have made it work with hiring virtual assistants, and from now on, I'll just call it VAs. But it just didn't really seem worth it at the time. A lot of the properties came with a lot of work that needed to be done. Like the actual property, the owner wasn't doing a lot of things. Or different owners weren't really, they didn't provide a house that was fully ready to be rented out. There would be a lot of small things here and there that needed to be fixed. And with the person that I was working with, they were also really busy, so it was really difficult for me to coordinate a lot of things, especially since it wasn't just my properties that I started out with, and it was just too complicated. And I decided that I would just scale back down to what I had, and if I wanted to, I can scale up again and just get more of my own properties and bring in more private money partners. And then I remembered that I just don't want to. I don't want to be managing the guests and managing the property. Um, it's not like it's the worst thing in the world, but I have had really great experiences with long-term and mid-term tenants rather than short-term rental guests. So that's more of the direction that I started to go into.
Cool. And so you picked up and you were helping somebody else manage their properties. You're just figuring this out on your own as well, obviously with the support of the sub two community and the guys kind of teaching how they did it. What gave you the confidence, or how did you kind of learn to figure out how to manage these properties? Right? There's a lot of guest communication, there's turnover, there's coordination with cleaners and maintenance. Like, there's a lot of moving parts to
Mhm.
figure out. And how'd you go about doing that?
Oh my God, trial and error. It was hilarious. They definitely taught a lot with that whole challenge. I think the first like five were really, really in-depth Zooms. Um, but obviously, like when you're kind of in the weeds of things and you're a little more experienced and seasoned, you don't always think about like what you just said, scheduling and coordinating cleaners, the cleaning schedule and all of those things. So it's not like everything would be mentioned. So yeah, it really was a lot of trial and error. I don't know what gave me the confidence to just go out and sign a lease. I remember at the time I didn't have a car and I had asked my mom to borrow hers. And she was like, "Yeah, sure. Where are you going?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go sign a lease out in downtown." And she was like, "What? Are you sure?" And then she didn't know what I was doing. And so when she heard that, she was like, "Oh my God," a little concerned. But for me, I think I just felt like, because I brought in a private money partner, I wasn't putting down the down payment or security deposit. So I was like, well, I'm basically not coming in with any money. I think I'm fine. I also ran the numbers. I ran the numbers with a few other people and with the private money partner and said, hey, I don't think this is going to be a cash flow cow. This is really probably just going to break even. And I want everybody that's going to be working on this to know that. And we may not even break even. I don't know, but I'm learning as I go. And they're like, so are we? We're totally fine with it. And it still produces $900 a month in cash flow
Awesome.
or profit, I guess. Um, but yeah, I think for me, the fact that the banks aren't really involved. I think that was like the biggest thing that was holding me back when it came to buying a property. Even if I were to buy it sub two or seller finance, well, seller finance is different, but with sub two, I still have the banks. And for me, that word like mortgage was just huge and scary, and so I didn't want to touch it. So again, yeah, the lease just seems like it's like, okay, we know it's temporary. I'll do maybe a year. And then after that, I just kind of figured it out and hustled. And I think I furnished a 3 bedroom, 1.5 bath for like maybe $500.
Wow.
Yeah.
How'd you pull that off?
I acquired the help of a lot of my family, my mom and my aunt and a family friend, and my cousin actually, and my dad. Bunch of random people here and there, but there was a couple days where we just hired a U-Haul and went everywhere. We picked up beds, bed frames, couches, furniture pieces. It was crazy. Refrigerators. Yeah, but I was very big on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace and OfferUp, and while a lot of people will say don't use those, it's usually because they're used furniture, and you don't want to be bringing in nasty things into the home. So before I would load them up and stuff, I would inspect them. Like I want to make sure that when I do anything, I'm doing the best that I can. And maybe you're not doing your absolute best because that's like tapping into the deepest parts of your mind. But if I'm going to be providing a service, I want it to be, good. I don't want to be cutting corners if I don't have the money to do that. But I just want to make sure that people feel like they're having a good stay and a clean stay. So that was really big for me.
Yeah, I love that. And it seems like it's a good way for you. It was a good way to just get your feet wet without having the extra anxiety of a 30-year mortgage and all of the extra, upfront costs that come even with a sub two. Like you said, like there's still down payments. There's still a ton of entry costs to get into one of those, right? It's cheaper than putting 25% down in a bank,
Mm-hmm.
but it lets you get proof of concept, learn a bunch of stuff without having a huge time risk of being committed for this long, long period of time, but also this huge capital risk. And that's a nice way to do it without a ton of extra long-term risks. So it's cool to see that progress that you made just by going through. And it still wouldn't have happened. You could have watched all those videos and talked about doing it and not done it, but you jumped in and you took the action to learn part of that and know, hey, I'm probably going to screw this up. But the biggest thing that I heard was I told everybody was clear about what was happening, what's going on, what might happen, and they still bought into that. And I think that's super important to point out as well.
Thanks. Yeah. And then the last thing that I kind of just remembered was why mortgage is and like banks especially were so scary to me was growing up. we were very much a family that was like, okay, we don't want to have loans. When I was starting to go into college, my dad was like, be very wary of student loans and maybe don't even get them. And I was like, you're right. So I was very, very much not in that mindset of like utilizing other money. Now I'm a little better, especially because I have such wonderful people. Like I believe that you do underwriting a ton. So I have people like you, people like my partners, and just a whole sub two community that can go to really say, okay, I just want to know if the numbers would work. Is a loan worth it?
100%. And the numbers, real estate, it can be super emotional because it's houses, especially like your personal house you're going and you want to fall in love with it. But when you look at an investor, it's easy to like fall in love with the potential deal. But
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, it's all about numbers. And it should be make a decision based on numbers, not based on emotion or feeling pressured or anything like that. And I think that's super important, right? I know your partners are really good at underwriting. You guys are going to do underwriting stuff, I think, starting today, which is great because it's the most intimidating part to some people, but it's also the most important part. You've mentioned it multiple times where it's like, I ran the numbers, or at least break even, or we're going to do, this is the potential. And that's super important to know. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the emotion can get in the way when it should just be, do the numbers work?
Yeah.
So the other couple of things you talked about real estate wise was arbitrage. That's how you got started. Assuming the wholesale operation and kind of running that come next. Was that the next step, or was that kind of in parallel at some point?
Yeah, that was kind of the next step. I was doing Airbnb arbitrage, and then I was kind of looking in the multifamily field for a while, but um, it had it. It's not clicking for me yet. So, and when I'm looking at multifamily, I'm looking at like larger commercial properties, like 40 units and above, and that's like that is not going into something for the cash flow. That's 100 going into it for, I guess, the management experience, but it's more of like, okay, at the end when we refinance or when we sell, that's when the payout's going to come, and I'm not ready for that yet. um, so I was doing that for a while, but then yes, the wholesale came afterwards. The partners that I was working with in the multifamily field, we ended up doing the multifamily and then our wholesaling a little while after I joined the team so that we can get some more now money. And then late last year of 2023, Pace was doing this 18-minute challenge, pretty much saying, hey, if you practice something for 100 hours a year, you're going to get exponentially good at it, by the end of the year. If you break that down to, minutes wise daily, that's only 18 minutes a day. So just be consistent, do something for 18 minutes a day, and you'll see the compound effect essentially take place. And so that's what we really wanted to put out to people when people were saying, oh, I want to be a better closer. Oh, I want to do deals and stuff. It's like, okay, just do calls for 18 minutes a day. And here we'll provide a structured organization or a structured operation so that you can do so. And so we also at that time ended up kind of merging our teams with another wholesale team because they were all out of Houston while I was in LA. But that's when we joined Sub 2 Drew and Sub 2 Lou, Andrew Ariaga, and Bradley Lewis. That's when we ended up merging with their teams. And we've just been running that for, I think, a little over 8 months now. And it's been great. It's been really, really fun. But trying to think, there's a little more to it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's so it started with the Airbnb and then some multifamily and then the wholesale operation.
Awesome. So were there any parallels going from the Airbnb arbitrage, or some stuff you could take away from the Airbnb arbitrage going into this, new vertical business that you have?
I'm sure there are some. I think when I think about the arbitrage, I just think about like the biggest thing that I think about is the hospitality aspect of things. So like the customer service. And I don't do any of the calling. I was more of I'm more of the management of the team. So I want to say yes, mostly like the patience that comes from the Airbnb arbitrage. But before I was doing Airbnb, actually, I think, or maybe sometime in between, I was actually calling for Keegly. So I had been in a direct to agent kind of business, and I was an outreacher doing a lot of cold calls to agents. So that was the biggest thing that helped me with this wholesale operation. Like that's why I'm more in the management position, because I understand what people are going through when they're calling these agents. I've been there before, and this is how I worked through things. And then we have a ton of other great people on the team who have also been callers. And closer, we have TJ Nguyen that provides so much value and education to a lot of these people. So yeah, I would say that small, it was like a 1 to 3 months position, I think, at the time when I was with Keegley. But I think that helped me more than anything in the wholesale operation rather than Airbnb.
Awesome. And what, for people who don't know, what is Keegley? What is that operation?
So Keegley is just a larger, I guess, wholesale franchise. So wholesaling is essentially buying something. I mean, you can say buying it at a discount and then selling it for more, and then the profit is made in between. That's what you keep. So I grew up with my mom wholesaling jeans and wholesaling clothes, and now we're just wholesaling houses. So that's what Keegley does, and they have, I don't know, franchise kind of all throughout the U.S. And so a lot of, I'm sure they do different things, but the franchise that I was with, they would reach out to agents in the area, or yeah, in I think it was Charlotte, North Carolina, for that team. Yeah, we would just reach out to agents, say, hey, I'm interested in buying properties. These are our buying criteria. And when I say our buying criteria, it was actually more of our buyers, because as a wholesaler, you're not looking to acquire the property. You're looking to sell it off.
Awesome. Thank you for that breakdown. Super helpful. The last portion, or the last part that you had mentioned as part of real estate, is private money lending. That's, I think, been your focus more than the other two. Not that you're not focusing on the other ones, but that's been like your new venture that you're really building up. So what is a private money lender? What do they do? And what specifically are you providing?
Mm-hmm. So private money lender is somebody that has money. When we say private, I'm still trying to think of the best way to word this, but essentially you're not getting a loan from a bank. Private money is from a private individual rather than an institution. Now we also do hard money loans, and that kind of goes into something else. But the way that I kind of see that is just there's a group of people now that put their money together, and then they'll put it into whatever ventures they would like to put it in. I forgot the other questions that you had asked me in regards to what I'm doing. But essentially,
yeah, what are you doing specifically? Like, what does it look like? And what does your business look like in regards to the private money lending portion of it?
Yes, that's what it was. So I, I help a lot of people right now, especially when it comes to funding their flips. My biggest thing is I really like I was saying earlier, I like collaboration and I love to help people. And I know getting into this, like I said, I used a lot of private money partners when I was going into the Airbnb arbitrage, and I used other people's money essentially. And that, because I used other people's money, I was able to do the things that I've done. I really wanted to make real estate work, so I was going in full time, and I didn't have another source of revenue coming in or income coming in. So yeah, I was not in a position to really. It would have been great if and I think about this often, if I had like a W-2 to be able to put into this. But anyways, that's where I feel like my situation is similar to a lot of people's, and they want to get into real estate, but they don't necessarily have all the means in terms of capital. And so that's where I come in, and that's where me and my team come in. And if you have if a fixer-upper house that you want to buy, renovate a bit, and then sell it on the market, that's where a lot of people come to us, and we help them when it comes to the acquisition and the renovation costs. And not only that, we also help some people when it comes to them actually buying a rental property. There's certain criteria, but if they're buying a property to kind of fix it up a little bit or get a tenant in there and then be able to refinance and kind of pay us out within a few months, that's something that has kind of been our bread and butter recently. And then lastly, I had mentioned it earlier in the episode, I guess, but we also help people when it comes to EMDs or double closings, essentially transactional funding. So what a double close is a little not difficult to explain, but when you buy a house, I guess you close on a house, and that's how you know the transaction is fully complete and you actually own the property. So a lot of there's a lot of different reasons why someone would double close. So essentially the wholesaler and the seller, maybe like, so the seller and the wholesaler would close, and the wholesaler would own the property. Immediately the wholesaler and the end buyer would close, and then the end buyer would own the property. So the wholesaler does own the property for that short window. And the reason why people actually do that, because if you're thinking, well, if you're wholesaling, isn't the point to just sell the property? Like, why are you going through that extra step? Could be for a couple different reasons. One of the main reasons that I've seen has been a lot of end buyers will say, oh, you're going to make $40,000. Why am I paying so much? Like, your assignment fees are generally, 15, maybe 20,000 on the high end. Like, I'm not going to be paying that 40,000. I would want to get a better deal. And I completely understand. But sometimes if you found a good deal and you're like, your numbers work, that's why you're already buying the deal. It shouldn't matter what I'm making, because what are you making? A lot of wholesalers, and I understand that, they'll think that way. And so they double close so that the end buyer doesn't necessarily see what the seller makes or what the seller is selling the house for. So they're fine. They're like, oh, okay, I'm going to buy this house at this price, whatever. I'm assuming that they'll make whatever assignment fee makes sense. So essentially, a lot of double closing helps wholesalers make higher assignment fees, which is really fun.
Mm-hmm. So they need the money you provide the money for them to buy the house initially from the seller, and then they immediately get that money returned to them, or your money returned to them to repay you, plus a little bit for their assignment fee. And then obviously you guys make that whatever you guys agree on with the wholesaler to make that extra money. So it does cost them a little bit, but if they're going to make 40 grand by doing it a double close, and if they didn't do it that way, maybe they're only going to make 20. So even if they're paying you guys an extra 5, like you said, it doesn't really matter how much you guys make as long as it's allowing them to make that extra money. So it lets them be more flexible, again, without using their own money. And it's a win for everybody, right? The seller gets to sell their house. The wholesaler makes their assignment fee. You guys get your money back plus some for your investment. And then the end buyer gets to do whatever they want with it and make money. So it's like a 4-way win-win-win-win situation, which is cool. And so it's literally like the time period between double closings is, what is it, like they sign the papers with the seller and then walk across the hall and sign the papers with the buyer and call it a day? Or is it like 30 minutes a day? Like, how quickly typically does that take, or have you seen it take?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it take kind of like what you were saying, like 30 minutes. It depends. A lot of people will be able to use the same title company to do the double close. There have been some weird times where people are using different title companies, or you're in a state like California where you can't double close in one day. So you'll take 2 business days essentially for the whole transaction to complete. So it really does range. So yeah, that's kind of the answer. It depends on the deal, because it depends on the location, and it depends on how many title companies people are using.
Right. But still, and that's still good because it's quick for them, right? So they don't have to wait weeks for like things to go wrong. As we know, real estate stuff goes sideways all the time that you have to navigate. So the less period of time that we can have for things to go wrong, the better. But also for on your end, for the lenders, you guys are getting whatever return that is, even if it's $5,000 profit in your end. If that's within a half an hour, I would take a $5,000 profit in 30 minutes any day of the week. So it's that short period of time is super advantageous for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So throughout all 3 of those areas, you've mentioned multiple times, I partnered with people, I work with people, I have partners. So tell me a little bit more about how you found these people, how you built the relationship, how you knew when was the right time to get into that partnership or to work with them.
Yeah. I've definitely gotten a better sense of it as I've gone through all my journey so far. Before, I was kind of just partnering with anybody that would partner up with me. And again, it kind of came from, well, a lot of it came from, I don't know what I'm doing, so I would rather partner up with somebody so that I can shoulder the responsibility, the burden of responsibility with somebody else. And so that's how it's kind of started. And more, it's really pleasant where it doesn't feel like I'm having to search out and seek for more partners. it really feels like they're kind of coming to me. And a couple times people have actually sought me out and said, hey, I want to work with you. We met here. We've talked about this, and I've seen you do this and this and this. And this is my plan. And this is how I think we would work. What are your thoughts? And so that's when we kind of start the conversation. And then we talk about, okay, let's talk about expectations. What exactly are we expecting from each other? And kind of going into that rabbit hole. That I learned a ton about expectations with the Airbnb arbitrage money partners, essentially, private money partners. But I had learned that with some partners, they would say, hey, I'm going to bring the money, but I can also manage it. There are a couple properties as well where there were three of us. So only one of us was the money partner, and then the other two were management. And there was no clearly defined roles in terms of how we were going to spread the management, essentially. So I just kind of took everything on. So that was definitely a learning lesson. And now what's nice is I'm learning a little more of like, okay, well, if I'm going to be someone's partner, if I'm going into a partnership, what exactly does the whole thing entail, so that I know if worse comes to worse, if I had to do everything, can I do everything?
Yeah.
I think that answered your question.
Yes, it does. And that's perfect. That's, I think it's easy, I guess easier in some ways to go it by yourself because you don't have to manage other personalities.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, you can't know everything. And sometimes it's better to partner with somebody who can help fill in the blanks that you don't have. But it comes with managing that, other person's expectations, and
Mm-hmm.
it's business, things go wrong. So, and you can't plan for everything, but you can have those conversations to coordinate with somebody. Hey, here's what I'm responsible for. Here's what you're responsible for. Are we both good with that? And if XYZ thing goes wrong, like, how are we going to navigate through those? And I think that's super important to point out. And that's what you've mentioned multiple times. What's the saying? It's you can go fast. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's always what I think about when I think of partnerships. And I'm so happy to hear that, like, hey, have they all worked out, or have you had to, like, the one where you ended up kind of doing all the work? Like, how did you navigate when things kind of went south?
I'm still navigating it. I for a lot of those ventures that aren't going as well as one would hope. I mean, they're for the Airbnbs. Again, the leases aren't very long, and we're really on like a month-to-month basis on a lot of the properties that we have. So I know that if I really just didn't want to manage these properties anymore, like if it just didn't seem worth it, then we can just get out of it. It's fine. But with a lot of other partnerships where small things have gone awry, that just it gives me the opportunity to start understanding and practicing having conversations that are a little less agreeable than I am. And so, if somebody kind of disappoints you with something, you want to bring it up. And I watch a ton of business content, and I love people like Cody Sanchez and Layla Hormozy, and especially Layla Hormozy. She talks a lot about communication. You can definitely tell that she did a lot of learning when it came to psychology. And I love that. And it's not like I'm trying to manipulate people or anything. I just want to understand how to best communicate with people. And I love the way that she goes about things, because it's very, very much in the positive. So why bring something up and dwell in something and make somebody feel bad if that's not going to be productive? So nowadays I'm like, okay, this thing happened and I did not like that. How can I best bring it up to this person? And it's nice just because of these partnerships. Not only have I been able to have the opportunities to have those conversations with partners, but then it also kind of shifted to having conversations with guests or having conversations with owners or tenants that I didn't really care for, but I had to step up to the plate because it's my job. And for that, I'm much better at it than I would have thought, or than I was initially. And it's built a lot of confidence in me. It's been really, really nice because I've been able to go into situations where I Oh my God. For instance, like a more of like funny kind of example is one of my properties before a couple years when I first got it, we were having some trouble with the hot tub, and the hot tub wouldn't stay on for some reason. And we would have guests come, or there were a couple times where I didn't know that this situation was going on or how to fix it. So guests would come, the hot tub wouldn't be working, it wouldn't be in working order, and they would call me and they're like, "Hey, the hot tub doesn't work." And I was like, "Oh my God, have you tried this and this and that?" And I would try to walk them through this whole process. Sometimes it wouldn't even work, but it was like 9 o'clock at night and I couldn't get anybody else out there. And I'm like, "I'm so sorry, I can try to get somebody out there tomorrow." And it was, I mean, they booked for this hot tub. Like that was the main reason. And I guess just because, like, just the way that I was coming off to them and really showing them, like, I'm calling them, they can hear it in my voice, like I'm trying to figure things out. They gave me 5 stars. Sometimes they didn't even get to go in the jacuzzi, which is crazy. But I don't, yeah, it's just having those opportunities where you start figuring it out. I think that's how life is. You really figure a lot of stuff out. And so I would really much rather see everything that I'm going through as an opportunity to learn or an opportunity to grow in this aspect rather than like, "Oh my God, why is this happening to me?" Or like, "Oh, I'm so sick of this," or "I'm over this." Like, okay, you can have that attitude, but I don't really see that being productive.
So your mindset was kind of, has it always been in the right spot? Because that's what it sounds like. I mean, I'm sure there was some work through it and then some doubt through it, but the mindset portion of that, the victim mentality where it's like, oh, all this stuff's happening. Why is it happening to me? And then even like communication and clearly caring about the people and not like getting frustrated with them, like showing them like, hey, I'm trying, I'm working through this. Like there's a lot of mindset things with that would keep somebody from even attempting to do anything, taking the action, right? You're learning from Layla Hormozy and Cody Sanchez, and then you're putting that stuff into action. Like, was that always kind of how your mindset was, or was that something that you've built up over the years of just taking action on it?
Yeah, definitely. I think the latter. I mean, I kind of realized this in high school, but I didn't realize it as much as I do now. That I kind of grew up with a very big victim mentality. I think if somebody were to hear me say that from high school, they would agree. And it's, I don't think I was the most annoying person, but for in high school, I was hung up on a guy, and it was like kind of my whole world at the time. And so you're just like, oh. But although I don't think I really said like, why is this happening to me, I often just compared myself and my life to a lot of my friends' lives. I mean, a lot of my friends growing up, they had very wealthy or like upper middle class situations. I definitely did not, and so I kept like, I people say comparison is a thief of joy, but I like the way like the Hormozis kind of say, like, it's not the comparison, it's your perception of the comparison. Essentially, like, are you when you're comparing yourself to others, are you feeling lackful, or are you feeling like, oh, they're here, they're just a human, I'm just a human, I can get there too, and like it's actually more motivating. But anyways, to kind of get back on track, um I was kind of more in the lackful mindset of the comparison growing up. And I was really, a lot of times, like before I got into the real estate and the entrepreneurial field more than anything, I would focus a lot on a lot of different things that I didn't like about myself or about my situation. And when I became an entrepreneur, I think you start understanding, especially if you are your own boss and you have the company, all of your input directly correlates to your output, or at least most of it, like 99%. I mean, there's some chance in everything, but after a while, you start seeing how, okay, nobody's going to help me in this situation. Even though I have partners, they're not helping. So it's up to me. And the more and more that I felt like, okay, things are up to me, things are up to me, I started reading more business books. I started reading, like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and all these different things, and listening to the Hormozis, and seeing people that actually grew something big and meaningful. You start thinking about like, okay, well, if I want to be at least just a fraction of what they are, I'm reading these and I'm listening to them for a reason. I want to get a little bit of their attributes and kind of put it into me. And so what are their attributes? And so more and more you start going into a lot of things are mindset. Like almost everything is mindset. And I think that's also where the whole collaboration also comes with. It comes with, I don't want all the responsibility, honestly. um, but also more than anything, after a while, it's like, I just want to work with people. I don't like doing things alone. I can do it, but if you know what the Clifton Strengths Test is, it's really fun. You start going into essentially a test saying these are more what your strengths are. Are you more analytical thinking or relationship building or influent, whatever? I'm very much more relationship building, and it makes sense. So I love working with other people. I love more and more people succeeding. Um, Even if it's like, we used to work together and then we didn't and now they're flourishing. It's like, dude, that's awesome. I'm not going to be somebody that's like, wow, you used me as a stepping stone. It's like, no, that's cool. I know what it takes for me to get to these kind of steps. So I know that like whatever happened, you put in the work, even if it wasn't like, with some people, they're great. Their personalities are so good that they even attract people. So it may not look like they did a lot of work, but it was just, I think they did a lot of like inner work. Um, but yeah, anyways, to answer your question, long story short, I definitely didn't have this kind of mentality going into it, and I'm developing it more and more, especially in the last year, and it's just so nice.
Yeah, it's always a work in progress. Mindset's always. I don't know anybody who's like it can't be fully perfect. The imposter syndrome too. I think at Squad Up a few months ago, Vina Jetty was one of the speakers, and she was talking about her journey through imposter syndrome. She had the first property, and now she's this big multifamily like capital raiser. She does all this amazing stuff, but she's pushing the limit of getting into bigger and better rooms every time. And so even though she's super successful, she still feels like she's an imposter in those bigger rooms. That's what she was saying. And
Yep.
that never goes away. It's always the development part of your life, but it's good to see that you're recognizing that, all right, this is where I was, this is where I am. I know I still need to work on it, but I'm good with how I'm progressing and continuing to progress that.
Exactly.
So kind of staying on the mindset portion of it. So you're 24 years old, you're doing all of these, entrepreneur, you got all these business stuff. Like what would you give? What advice would you give to somebody else who's maybe in their early 20s or graduating high school to kind of help them if they're interested in entrepreneurship and starting their own business? What advice would you give to them to get started and kind of help make things as easy as they can be at that point?
I would say to get more into entrepreneurial rooms. So there's a ton of free meetups. Um, like you can kind of go into anything. I joined the like the sub two communities free Facebook group at first. I definitely just dove in, which is crazy. I wouldn't necessarily recommend a lot of what I did to other people, but the things that I have learned definitely is that um, you just want to be around the people that you want to be like. So if somebody has a lot of money, or if somebody has like a beautiful family that you like, or like, oh, I love how they are with their kids. They're able to be present with their kids. Or, oh, I love this person that is kind of like what this whole wealthy well-being and like healthy wealthy family, they're putting a lot of focus on their health. I want to be around these people more. Oh, if they're putting, where can I find these people? I can find them at a gym. Oh, okay, if people are really into real estate investing, where can I find them? Let me just look up real estate meetups or something. Go onto meetup.com or go onto Eventbrite or whatever it may be, and you'll find those invitations and just going there. Because you should be in proximity to people that are doing more than you are. So you'll just see that you'll level up as you do that, because not only do you start, if you're around those groups, you start to understand the lingo a little more when people are talking to you, but then people will see that you're interested, and especially if you're young, people want to help you. Like people want to help me, and I'm so grateful for it. But now I'm seeing that I want to help younger people. So I'm helping a lot of coming out of high school students. A lot of them are starting to get really interested. I work with a lot of youth because of my mom's nonprofit. And so they start asking me a lot of real estate questions and a lot of different questions. And all I want to do is pour into them. And so I could definitely see older people that are way more established wanting to just pour into you, especially if you're young. So just use that and feel grateful for it. And, if they're pouring into you, you want to pour back. So you want to learn as much as you can and kind of just stay in those groups and be consistent with that. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to do the craziest thing and have like a whole 3-hour morning routine. But if you are going to these meetups on a monthly basis or a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis, whatever it is, I think that is kind of the start of it. And then after that, that's where you kind of start understanding as well what you want to start going into. So if you are interested in real estate, but you're like, I don't know what it is at all. If you go to these groups and you start talking to people, you see people that do all these kinds of different things: lease options, buy and holds, flips, multifamily, single, like all these different things. And you can start getting a better sense of, okay, what does it take for each of these things? And how can I even go about it? And you can ask those people right then and there.
Mm-hmm. And that's part of the problem with real estate, especially, is there's so many different avenues to go down that it's like, how do I even pick one? And, having somebody who can help guide you, they can talk to you because they've been experienced in probably multiple aspects of it, but they can talk to you, learn a little bit about you and your personality, and maybe see something that you don't see and where are your strengths, and maybe certain asset classes or certain portions of that specific part in real estate are more advantageous to your strengths. You're a relationship builder, right? So you're good at managing people, working with teams, and communicating with people. That's a completely different skill set than somebody who wants to sit and run numbers all day, right? They're both equally important. They're just, for somebody who wants to run numbers, right? That's talking to somebody may not be, or talking to a lot of people may not be something that they enjoy doing. So they might not be successful with that. Right.
Yeah.
Whereas you're like, let me talk to people. Let me talk to as many people as I can because I want to learn about them. I want to help them and figure all that out. Whereas like maybe sitting behind a computer isn't something that you love to do. And maybe you like to do that too. And you have both of those, but there's always something that's your superpower, and you need to focus on that. And that will lend itself to, all right, what area in real estate do I want to get into?
Mm-hmm. And it's
Like,
cool too. Sorry, go on.
yeah, no, go ahead.
I was going to say that kind of ties into like what we were talking about earlier with the mindset and such too, because a lot of people may not feel like if you're an analytical person, you're just a great person for the numbers. Again, super, super important. I love people that love underwriting and analyzing. And I know that I'm not totally that person. And so it's interesting because especially if you're like, oh, I'm a relationship person, or oh, I'm a visionary, I love coming up with these ideas, you can start feeling like I can't measure what I'm doing, so I'm not doing anything. And you start worrying like, what value do I have to bring at all? And so it's nice because the more that you're again like in these groups and working with good people, the more that they'll see your strength and they'll highlight it and say, I want you to do this. And then after a while you'll kind of see, oh, this is my superpower. And maybe they won't even have you like, oh, I want to do this. Maybe you'll just try to fit into different gaps to try to help the businesses or help people in certain situations. And then some of them may stick a little more. And more, you want to be very vigilant of like what you're doing and how you feel about doing things. So when I had to underwrite for people, I was like, wow, I don't know if I want to do this all the time. I can do it sometimes. And I love the fact that I can help some people. But I realized that when I was managing the wholesale team for example, or if I'm talking to people at different conferences, I like that way more. And I guess it's helpful. And not, I guess, at least starting off, I felt like, oh, okay, more and more people want to talk to me, and more people, I can connect a lot of people. Oh, okay, so it is helpful that I'm able to just go to these conferences and talk to people. And that's almost like all of my job, because now I hear this person is trying to raise money for something, and this person is trying to put money in something that is very similar to this. Okay, great.
Yeah, I love that. And you recognize that. And just because you're focused on one thing, your superpower is one thing, doesn't mean you can't do other things too. It doesn't mean you're not good at it. It's just focus is the most important thing. It's the hardest thing, but it's the most important thing. And like you said, sometimes there's so much where you just don't do anything. And that's like the worst thing that you can do, is to just do nothing. So
Yeah.
getting out there is super important. So you, we talk a lot about real estate stuff. What, like health and fitness wise, just to kind of round out the podcast. So you mentioned you like to juggle, and that's juggle with a soccer ball, not like juggle balls, right?
That's me.
So did you play soccer growing up, and that's kind of translating that, or you just like juggling the soccer ball?
No. My dad is a big soccer player. I think he's been playing since he was like 4.
Oh.
So he's definitely that person. I used to feel bad growing up because I was definitely not an athletic kid. But my dad was. And so he kept trying to make me, well, not make me into like a star or anything, but he's like, it's important to be able to know how to use your body. So we would juggle the ball a lot. We would throw the frisbee. We would play basketball, and we would do all these different things. Juggling the soccer ball has just been the most fun. So that's been the one that keeps, and it's really easy because, with the basketball, you need a hoop. Frisbee's all right sometimes, so we kind of alternate between them. But and I found this out within the last few years, I don't like going to gyms and like having to, I don't know. It's the repetitive movement that I just get bored of, I think. So I like being in like sports, and I like doing those things because there's like, yeah, you can say, okay, juggling is repetitive because you're just kicking the ball. But no, there's a ton of times where the ball like goes out and you're like, oh my God, I can't get it. And a lot of different things like that. And maybe even going running sometimes. That's fun. But I think it's just, and with running, it's like, oh, that's repetitive as well. But I like to run around really nice neighborhoods. So there's different houses every step that I'm going. So yeah, I think that was something that I learned. Like I like doing things that are dynamic.
So how do you fit that in, right? I mean, some juggling and even going for a run can be short, but you have a lot of going on, 3 different businesses, you got a bunch of stuff happening, you're talking to people between there. How do you fit in time to go and exercise or fit fitness and health into your life and your daily schedule?
Yeah, well, one thing is that I plan out my schedule at least the night before. And what I try to do as well on a weekly basis is I'm like, okay, here are the goals for the week. Like, here are the things that are going to be moving my business. So I want to implement these throughout the days in the week. And then in the days of the week, I'm like, okay, what am I going to do tomorrow? And then I plan out my day. And so I'll plan out when I'm going to exercise. Sometimes I plan out when I'm going to eat. And we spoke about this with the whole healthy, wealthy family challenge, but it's like sometimes as well, you need to plan out when you're going to have family time and all these different things that you're like, it's the most important thing to you, but because it's the most important thing, you kind of you take it for granted a little bit and you assume like, okay, it's going to be there, but it's like, no, it's you still have to make time for it. And it's whatever you put your time and attention to, it grows. So yeah, that's where I'm not going to be working from when I wake up to when I sleep anymore. I do that sometimes, and it's not great, but it's sometimes now. Before it was like all the time. But that's where I'm like, okay, it kind of depends on the day. If I have to wake up early for a meeting, then all right, I'll do something in the evening. I'm very fortunate that I live in LA, so the weather is quite nice right now, and a lot of times I've been waking up at like 5 something in the morning to like directly go into a meeting. So I'm like, okay, well, I think it's fine if I were to stop work at 6 or 7 and it's still daylight and I still have time to do something. So I think that's how I fit it in. But I'm also very fortunate where I don't have a whole family to take care of and I don't have a lot of these things. So I could definitely like fit in the time. But yeah, I would say that. I think a lot of times as well, like if you can't, like you see where you can fit it into your schedule, and you're like, oh, well, I can't fit it anywhere. It's like, okay, well, is that true? You want to just stay up a little later? Like, do you wake up at 8 a.m.? That's not that early. That's for me, that's pretty late now. So like if you wanted to do something midday or like late at night when everybody's asleep, just do a quick thing and then go to sleep. Or if you are more of an early bird, then all right, sleep at 8, 8:30 or 9, and then wake up half an hour earlier and do something then. And that's what I was doing initially. That's where I was doing a lot of Pilates. and then going to work and stuff. So there's definitely room to fit things in.
Yeah, I think using I don't have time, so, I mean, certainly there are days where it's like wall to wall meetings. If you have, a family, kid, there's obligations, but for the most part, like you said, you got to have a half an hour somewhere, right? Maybe to sacrifice something a little bit, but I don't have time. I don't love that. I didn't make time. I'd rather hear that. That's the right one. Like if anybody that I'm coaching, like nutrition wise, fitness wise, like I don't have time to do that. It's like, okay, I would rather you just say I didn't make the time to do that. That would make me feel better because it's a conscious choice that you can make. And if you don't plan out your day or your week or whatever that looks like, it maybe doesn't need to be down to the 15-minute intervals, but if you don't plan things out, you'll wake up and just be like reacting to everything all day. And then, yeah, you probably won't accomplish the most important things that you need to accomplish. So I love that you're like, all right, the night before, like, what does my day look like? Where can I fit this stuff in and make it happen? And another thing that I know that you've been doing as part of that challenge that we did was, all right, I want to spend time with my family, but I also need to work out and I only have a half an hour to do that. How can I fit both of those things in? Well, can I integrate the two, right? I'm going to do something. I'm going to go work out or I'm going to go throw the Frisbee with my dad. Okay, cool. Now I'm getting my family time in and also my workout for the day. And like, how can I make that happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And kind of everything that a lot of things go back to mindset. I don't want to like quickly put on that how you were saying it's not, I don't have time. I didn't make the time. And throughout the last year, I've been rephrasing stuff to be like that as well, because that's still kind of in the victim mentality. Like, oh, I don't have the time to do this. I have all these things coming at me, or life is happening to me. It's like, no, you're happening to your life. So don't just react to things. You are being proactive when you're scheduling out your days. You're being proactive when you're making that conscious decision to say, I'm going to do this at this time. And if you didn't, that's on me. And I love the book The Compound Effect, because he starts it out by talking about personal responsibility, and pretty much everything in your life, especially if you're an adult, if you're over 18, it's on you. So however your life is happening right now, that's because of you, and that is the actions that you're taking. So if there's certain things that you don't like, you can fix it. You have the choice too.
Yeah, exactly. It's that extreme ownership, the book by Jocko Willink too. That's more of a team, like company based thing, but still it can come down to personal things too, where it's like I'm wearing all the hats in my life and I can't blame one of my hats for the other one not happening. You have to take extreme ownership of everything that's happening to you because ultimately it's your fault whether or not you do it or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of books, I know you're a big reader. Obviously, you just mentioned a book. I like to read too. So I like to ask this question, partially because I like to get different perspectives on books that I've already read, if I've already read them. And if not, I usually end up taking away at least one book that I can add to my list. So it is a little bit of a selfish question because I do like to get recommendations. So top 3 books that have been most impactful to you.
I think The Compound Effect. I would say the first and foremost is probably 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and then The Compound Effect. And then the third one alternates between a lot of the newer books that I'm reading. Like right now, I'm reading Limitless by Jim Quick. I don't know if you've read that one. Have you?
Not yet, no.
Good. It's a good one. That one's pretty good. I read the 4 Agreements a lot, mostly because I'm forced to because of my mom. That's a whole different story. But the 4 Agreements was really good, at least for me growing up, because it essentially talks about like you want to do 4 things in your life. You want to be impeccable with your words. Don't assume things. Don't take anything personally, and always do your best. And so I have found, and I'll just go into the story. Might as well. So she owns a nonprofit, and we're essentially like a youth guidance center. And so we work with other agencies and the county of Los Angeles to provide youth employment. So they'll employ the youth and they'll pay them, but then they'll come to us as a job training center, essentially. And so a part of their training is as soon as they come in with us with the cohorts, we have them read the 4 agreements. And that's kind of because it's so important. When you're being impeccable with your words, you're watching your language, you're watching what you're saying. And then you don't assume things and you don't take things personally. Like all of this is incredible in the workspace. So it's big that my mom has all of these kids that are working with us read it. and we can't trust people to read it fully. So we started kind of a book club. Kind of. It's more of I read it with them, and we kind of popcorn read, or sometimes I'll just read the whole book because it's easier. But I make sure that we have discussions in between and after, so that everybody is like fully grasping the book. And I make sure that like everybody that I'm reading with has something to say about the section that we're reading, or the chapter, or the book, because that's how I really know that they're paying attention. And even if they weren't, then they hear everybody else kind of having these conversations. They're like, oh, that's really clicking. Okay. And yeah, I think that's the third book. And I think it's just because I've had those experiences, why I appreciate it so much. But yeah, it's really good. And it helps me, especially with the last part where it's always do your best. That helps me a lot, because there are certain times where I'm working on something and it's not for work, which is when it's not for like real estate stuff, then it's difficult to be like, okay, I'm going to give it my all. Cause sometimes it feels like this is a time waster and I don't really want to do this. I kind of just want to have meetings instead, or I want to like, whatever it may be. But I have to do this for whatever reason that reason is. And I noticed that was happening last week, and I was like, okay, well, it kind of feels like I'm like, ugh. And I don't like that feeling, and it's not fair to have that feeling with whoever I'm working with. And then I started thinking about the book, and I'm like, oh, duh, always do my best. I have to be here anyway. Let me just do whatever is required, and let me make it as good as it can be, or as good as I can have, like the attitude that I can have, because it's not being productive otherwise. So let's just flip the script. And I think that's what a lot of really good books have. Like a lot of them, again, talk about mindset, but they have their own different ways about talking about it. So it's really fun.
Yeah, and mindsets, we talked about a bunch of times, is so important. And to be able to pull something from different books and different perspectives on different ways you can have and set your mindset is the best part about books, right? It's like 20 years of somebody's experience packed into a 200-page book that you can read or listen to, or both, and try to pull something away from, right? It's like, it's not how many books can I read in a year, it's how many pieces of information or pieces of actionable items that I can take away from that and start implementing into my life as soon as possible.
Yeah.
That's why I love books. Books are the best.
They're so good. Oh, I love them.
So where can people find out more about you? Like maybe they need some money, some private money lending from you, or they want to find more information or just connect with you. What's the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, I would say Instagram. The handle is here. Instagram is the easiest and best way to get a hold of me, and also to see what I do. I post a lot there. I post a lot of my stories. I'm starting to post more and more actual posts and reels and stuff like that. But I am pretty good when it comes to answering my DMs as well. So I would say that, and then after a while, like you'll more and more, I'm getting more into like Facebook. So you can find me on Facebook as well. That may take a little longer though, because you get a lot of like scam requests. So more than anything, I would say Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, if you want to work on a project together, if you have a deal that needs funding, or if you want to just see what I'm doing.
Perfect. I love that. And I'll include that in the show notes as well. But otherwise, I had a blast on this conversation. Lots of awesome stuff, different perspectives. Thank you so much for coming on and taking an hour of your day. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. This has been really fun.
Awesome. Well, have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
You too.